Welcome to the Self-Control Show, a podcast for men. If you get defensive, shut down, or find yourself going 0 to 100, you're in the right place. Most men were never taught how to regulate their emotions. And this show is about changing that. It's not therapy, and it's not fluff. It's training. I'm your host, Jason Schnitzer. Let's get to work. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Thanks for listening. And got another great episode for you today. And what I have is probably one of the most common feedbacks that I hear that guys get from their wives about, kind of the dynamic that's been playing on in their house is that feeling like, hey, I'm just walking on eggshells. And what's interesting is sometimes that experience can be mirrored. What I mean is sometimes for us guys, it feels like we're the ones walking on eggshells, and wanted to talk about how that dynamic starts, why it's there, how it plays out, what the stakes are, and really what the path is to correcting that. And, what this practically looks like some guys, they'll come home, walk through the door, and then all of a sudden, their house can maybe go from chaos to kind of like the kids behaving more, being quiet, maybe just like kind of an overall tone shift in the house. And sometimes it can look like, hey, when my wife's home, the kids are kind of crazy. But as soon as my wife leaves, or if she goes on like a girls' trip and isn't there, like they behave. A lot of guys think it's like, oh yeah, that's because, they respect me and they don't respect my wife. Here's the hard truth is usually what that means is your kids are afraid of you, right? And what happens is there's usually a pattern of unpredictability or fear-based parenting that goes on to, hey, your kids either know that when, dad gets upset, he yells, he gets big, and he gets scary, right? Which causes your kids to brace, right? And to tighten up rather than relax. And that's the thing that's happening for your kids that creates eggshells, right? Same thing with your wife. And a lot of this stems from, not necessarily you being a monster per se, but it more has to do with volatility, right? Because a lot of times it's like they don't know which version of you they're going to get. Because sometimes when little things turn into big things, or we don't have patience, or we kind of go 0 to 100, it comes out of nowhere, right? And although maybe it's something that like makes more sense to you, you're carrying a lot of stress, etc. For a kid, especially, that is scary, right? Because it's calm and safe one moment, and then the next, all of a sudden, there's this big scary version of dad that shows up, and you see that, right, in your kids' faces. You see it in how they cry and how they react to those moments when you just totally lose your cool. And that has lasting impact on them and their nervous system, right? Because when you think about it, when someone feels safe, when a kid feels safe, when a wife feels safe, they don't talk less. What do they usually do when a kid meets somebody for the first time, right? What's kind of like especially when they're younger, a lot of times can be a natural tendency for a kid to be shy, right? And which I would say, like, most kids aren't shy, they're just like cautious of like the unknown, right? Like a lot of people are. And it's like, can I trust this person? Can I not trust this person? Right? And as soon as they kind of like relax and feel safe, what happens? All of a sudden, they start to laugh, they start to open up, they start to express, they start to share feedback, right? They're not quiet, they're not like making sure that they're minding their P's and Q's, right? There's this like, they become a more relaxed version, right? Versus an adaptive version, right? Oh, I better not. Like an adaptive version might sound like, oh, I better not say that because I don't want to upset dad, right? And sometimes I even hear guys say, man, if my kids would just do this, or if my wife would just bring things up in this way, that would help me not, lose my shit, basically. And again, whenever you have that dynamic play out, basically what you're saying is, I can't control myself, so you guys control you, so it's easier for me to control me. Which is like, who's the parent here? Who's the leader of the family, right? Who's the adult in that situation that we're asking our kids to be a certain way so we don't freak out and we don't lose our shit? Think about that, right? And a lot of times, like, what we don't see is that a lot of times that silence feels like peace, right? A lot of times, like for example, if you compare like work to home, like a lot of guys do, like, together I can keep it together at work, right? But at home I just kind of like lose it. And it's like some guys think they can stay regulated at work and they can stay calm at work. But the fact is you're not actually regulating. You're not actually doing things to stay calm. Usually what's going on is the pressure cooker effect. It's kind of what I call it, right? It's suppression disguised as regulation. Cuz like at work, you don't necessarily stay calm, right? You contain things, you swallow what you want to say with that irritation, right? It's like you tighten the lid, when you're dealing with a difficult client or customer or boss or employee. There's probably a version of you that wants to say something that's probably not very professional. What do you do with that, right? Usually you just tighten the lid and just stuff it down and don't say anything, right? And that's not actually regulation. That's not actually staying calm, right? You don't process it, you don't postpone it to like go back to it later. You just kind of like try to let it roll off your back. But what happens is that stacks all day. And if you have stressful days turn into stressful weeks, stressful months, stressful years, your jaw gets tight, your shoulders get tight, you get tight, you get tense up, and all of a sudden it's like you're this coiled up thing just ready to burst, right? So when you get home, it's not where you lose control, and that's like, I can't control myself anymore. It's like, no, that's when you stop holding it in finally, right? And you actually end up taking it out and taking a lot of things out on the people that are closest to you, right? That mean the most to you. And that starts the pattern, right? Your kids tense up, your kids brace, your wife tenses up, your wife braces. And all of a sudden, uncertainty becomes the catalyst for walking on eggshells. I better mind my P's and Q's so that I don't say and do the thing, so that my dad goes to that place and gets big and scary. Because, most guys would be like, man, I'd never physically hurt my kid, right? I'd never do that. But you go to a place that is akin to that, right? The rage, the anger, the tone shift, your voice getting louder, right? The passive aggressiveness that comes out sideways and under breath comments, right? All of that is like physical, I won't say physical abuse, but physical harm's cousin or brother, if you will, right? It looks like him, it smells like him, it feels like him. It's just a different version of that. And the hard truth about that is sometimes that's worse, right? Because a lot of times, guys will have grown up where, their dads hit them as a punishment. And almost every one of them is like, hey, I knew it was coming. You know, every time I did something bad, it's like, hey, yeah, but I knew better, right? Which is, in my opinion, total BS, right? Because kids know better, but they can't actually do better because they don't have their brains online for impulse control. So you can know something and know you shouldn't do something. Like we know we shouldn't eat so much sugar, but do we all do that? It's like, no. We know we probably shouldn't drink, right? Or do certain coping strategies, but drinking is one of the most socially accepted things, especially in America that there is and really in the world. So like adults can't do that, and we for some reason expect kids to do that. But anyways, that's like a tangent. So going back to what I was saying about like, kind of knowing what was coming, well, how it's worse is a lot of times kids don't know it's coming, right? Your wife doesn't know it's coming. And what's worse than like knowing something is coming is like the unknown. The unknown is probably the most unsettling thing for humans, right? Think about it. If you get a text that says, hey, man, we need to talk, right? And they don't tell you what you're going to be talking about, or your wife is like, hey, we need to talk. And you're like, what about? And they're like, we'll talk later, right? Versus, hey, something's really been bothering me. We need to talk. And it's about this, right? Even though it might be something really uncomfortable, you're like, whew, at least I know what it is so I can like prepare for it. But the unknown, we need to talk. Yeah. You tell me which one is worse, right? So when you think about that, that is basically what happens dynamically from a pattern when you lose it and you don't know why. There's an unknown factor that's at play all the time, right? Because you lose it over your kids taking too long to tie your shoes or getting ready in the morning or being late for the thing. You lose it over, asking your kids 3 times and on the fourth or fifth time, you yell. But it's like nothing that's crazy, right? So many times I'll hear guys say, my kids are great kids, but, right, this thing drives me crazy, or these things drive me crazy, right? And then like I lose control and then I go back to that place, right? And it feels like a relief, right? A lot of times when you finally raise your voice and say the thing loud, the problem happens, almost instantly, sometimes shortly after. It's like you're left with the guilt and the shame of, the looks on your kid's face, or how your wife just said you ruined the whole day and the rest of the night, or maybe even the weekend because you lost it again, right? And what happens is your apologies start to lose their meaning, right? There's no, like, you can take ownership, but like if you say sorry and you say next time you'll do better, but the same thing keeps happening over and over again, it's like, what do you expect? Promises don't work when there isn't action followed up behind it. My favorite saying is like the best form of an apology is change behavior, right? That's what they want to see. They want to see it. They're tired of hearing it, right? Or if you're not aware of what's going on dynamically, it's like this is what they're tired of it, right? And a lot of times guys will be like, well, if she would just bring it up in a nicer way. And it's like, a lot of times when you think about how long dynamically this pattern's been going on for, that bridge has been crossed so many times. And what you're experiencing right now is, your wife usually getting ready to blow the bridge up, right? And keep her kids on the other side. Because what tends to happen is eventually, your wife steps in. She sees what you can't see. Your kids feel and see what you can't see, right? Even when you think you're holding it together, it's like everybody can tell, right? The lid's getting close to bursting. And so, wife usually starts to jump in and play mama bear, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like you guys aren't on the same team. And that can be even more activating, right? When it's hard enough to get your kids to listen, and then it's like you versus them, and now it's you versus your wife and them, right? And then how dynamically that can play out is all of a sudden as they get older and the kids are smart, right? They start playing against each other, right? Adaptively, right? They're not manipulating. They're just like, oh, I need to get my needs met. And dad does this and mom does this. That's just how that happens, right? Eventually, what happens is they stop coming to you, right? Unless they really need you, right? I had a guy one time say, like, oh, yeah, but, my son comes to me like when things are really hard, like he comes to me, right? And it was interesting to hear, like, there was sort of like a, hey, like I'm doing something right. And it's like, the way that I see that is basically what you're telling me is your son doesn't want to come for you unless he really, really has to. And his back is up against the wall, then it's like, okay, better go to dad because I'm screwed. I'm by myself, right? And I've got no other options left. And you're his last resort. The point isn't to shame anybody here. The point is to be like, hey, when somebody feels comfortable and feels safe, especially your kids, like you want them to be like, you want them to have you at the top of their call list, right? I mean, don't let me put words in anybody's mouth, but most of the guys that I talk to, like, they just want to be looked up to as a good dad, a good father, a good husband, and they want the respect and the love that they feel like, I don't say they deserve, but they desire, right? But like think about like a boss, or if you're the boss, like the way you treat your employees, like there's a saying, like, you get more bees with honey, right? When you're calm, when the respect comes from being able to stay calm during hard times, right? A lot of times we want our kids to be regulated. We want our kids to be calm. Yet we are totally misaligned and not aligned, behaviorally speaking, with that, right? When we get agitated and irritated, we lose it, right? When they get agitated and irritated, they lose it. But that makes us lose it. And we're like, you can't do that, right? But we're doing what they're doing and they're following our lead, right? So, how are they supposed to learn how to respond in hard moments if you can't do that, right? Think about that. So, what's really going on here is a lot of times your emotions are taking over, your nervous system is taking over, and you don't know how to regulate either of those things, which, by the way, they go hand in hand. So, really, the choice is it's like, well, you can keep just calling it stress and you're stressed out, right? And I was like, oh, I just need more patience. I need more discipline, right? I'll try harder next time. Because what the problem with that is trying harder is like, I'm just going to keep tightening the lid more, right? And good luck with that. Because basically, you're doing the same thing harder without actually changing anything or getting new skills or getting support or learning anything, right? So that's the definition of insanity. I mean, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Doing the same thing harder over and over again just leads you faster to the same place that you were going, right? Because a lot of times it'll be like, keep it together for 2 or 3 weeks, and then bang, you lose it, right? And you lose it over the little thing. And again, it kind of comes out of nowhere. And your kids and your wife are like, holy shit, like, when's the next time this is going to happen? So that is what, and this like plays directly in, I mean, not just with your kids, but with your wife. It's like so many women are talking about how, like, hey, I just want to feel safe emotionally, right? And really, what they're saying is like, I just want to be able to trust that you've got your emotions under control, that my emotions and our kids' emotions and the emotions and the stress from work aren't going to take you out. And then that isn't going to get taken out on us, right? Cause us to feel afraid and uncomfortable in our own home, right? Because you want your home to be the safe place where everybody wants to come and be in, right? And ultimately, if that goes away, this is like the 100% number one thing that creates situations where you stop being lovers, you stop being partners, you stop being best friends, you stop being husband and wife, and it shifts into roommates status, right? You guys seemingly are too busy, even when the kids leave the house, maybe grow up and leave, right? And there's opportunity for connection. It's like you don't take the time, right? Or it's like you're in the thick of it and you're so busy, but you can't find time to prioritize your own relationship. And that's because it's like, of course, why not? Why would you? Right? Why would you go out of your way to do something where it's like it's always seemingly to end poorly, right? And to not to add on and to it's a different topic, but a lot of times instead of being able to like navigate through this stuff in a healthy way, what happens is like we just get defensive. We go on the attack. We feel like we're attacked, or we shut down, and we stay kind of like on our hill of like, look at all the stuff that I'm already doing, right? Can't you appreciate me? And we don't feel appreciated and all that stuff. Really, it has nothing to do with that, right? The responsibility for you lies in being able to regulate your own shit, regulate your own emotions, right? And obviously that's all what we talk about here. We point out the patterns and what's going on. What I do is help men learn these skills that were never taught to us in school. So if any of this resonates with you, as always, feel free to check out the Calendly link in the show notes in the summary. To book a free call, I'll offer a complimentary call to see if we're a good fit to coach together. So take full advantage of that. Catch you on the next one, guys. Thanks for listening.